Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. So, okay, the scene that you're seeing here is only kind of related to the thing that we're talking about. It's just a moment that made me appreciate back attack for the first time. See, the thing is, back attack, it's bugged me for a while at this point, because as far as the overall design of this game goes, there's a general kind of I guess you could say ebb and flow of logic to every little thing. There's a lot of intentionality behind a lot of oddly specific things, and overall, Reborn is one of those cases where generally across the board, if anything was left more or less the same from the PSP version, there was a pretty good reason for it. And usually it was addressed in some more elegant way. So, like the classic example here is going to be Evanescence, where there was basically no reason to assume it did what it did back in the PSP version, because in that one, when somebody went down after using Evanescence, they just look like they went down normally. In this one, they actually have their counter changed to blue, implying that they're a zombie now, which yeah, they also can knock themselves out during training. So essentially, that was kind of the clue there that led to finally kind of figuring out the whole they're partially undead but not really thing. So across the board, every skill in the game has been done that same way, and if they ever haven't, like if anything was ever left the same, usually it was going to be a case of it was probably easier to leave it than to bother doing anything about it. So for example, that would be something like Condemn, where essentially taking it off the player side while leaving it on the AI side would presumably be a lot of extra work due to, whatever kind of technical shenanigans were going on in the background. Now, when it came to back attack, though, it was a bit of an anomaly. It's a skill that is absolutely everywhere. It clearly has been there for a while, but it's also a skill that has seen a lot of work since the PSP version. Like, it wasn't just left as it was. That's what was so weird about it, because it wasn't just simply left on like before. I believe it was Rogue and Ranger that had it or something like that. But that was the thing. Like, it was a skill that didn't really see a whole lot of use, because most of the time anybody that had it didn't need it. And additionally, it was on classes that typically had other stuff that they could be doing that was better. And just overall, it was a strange skill before. But that's the thing. It's overall access has been expanded to a very specific subset of classes this time. More than double the classes have access to the thing. So it just seems super weird that there, here's the skill front and center. It's absolutely everywhere. It's not even an early game skill, which would give it that whole justification of, oh, it's just here for accuracy. Which, I mean, it is, but there's more to it. Like, don't get me wrong, there's not going to be any, like, here's this secret hidden tech that makes back attack amazing. No, it's actually just a very oddly specific thing of its design that I wanted to go over here. Okay, so here's the deal. I think I've cracked the code as far as why back attack is how it is. See, it's on a very, very specific set of classes. Specifically, you've got them on the Ninja, you've got them on the Archer, you've got them on the Buccaneer, the Ranger, and the Lord, right? Actually, let me double check real. Okie dokie, had to double check. Yeah, Vartan definitely doesn't have it. So, okay, so here's the thing though. Like, with every other skill of their type, they always come with some sort of guarantee of some sort. Like, design-wise, they always come with something extra. Accuracy itself is, generally speaking, not considered enough from the developers there. So, for example, we have our guaranteed hit plus our guaranteed crit. We have our guaranteed hit plus guaranteed fear. We have things like a guaranteed hit plus overpower, in the case of vigorous attack and eagle eye, right? So it just seems super weird that then at around the same time, if not, potentially later in some situations, here comes back attack strolling in all confident like, hey, I'm here to boost your accuracy slightly and guarantee nothing else. What's up? It just seems like a really weird oddball of a skill, right? Like, what's it doing there? Why is it so sure of itself? So the design of that had me wondering for the longest damn time. And finally, I was looking at this situation right here, and I found myself in a moment where I wanted back attack for the first time, but why? So this was, again, a Union level 0 / no experience challenge. Essentially a case where, half the team is level 1s and everybody else has maybe a couple of skills to their name. But, there's a very oddly specific situation where it actually ends up being very useful. So, for example, right here, right? The main heavy hitter on this team right now is Canopus. And the main way that certain things are kind of sniped in this particular situation here is a situation where, for example, we end up just kind of breaking the damage formula in a way. Where, for example, with Canopus, what we would do is we would put on a strengthen buff, get a crit, get several fizz cards, apply a breach to let's say the Garba guy over here, and then give him an elemental advantage. So essentially, we're going and we're stacking all the mechanics in place here to go for the two shot here, because this fight doesn't last very long because these units on my team aren't very durable. So I was going and reattempting this over and over and over, right? What became clear over and over is that there were going to be certain situations that I wanted to use a different Canopus build here. Namely, I wanted that there were going to be those situations when I wanted him to be firing a bow, and there were those situations that I was wanting him to use his melee weapon. That there were going to be certain cases when he could simply stack out somebody with a bow, and it would be a far better option, especially with crits being built into his regular attacks. So this kind of created a situation where I wanted him to have mode switches in some specific situations, but additionally, I could only boost his accuracy one way at a time. So for example, you'll notice that he's carrying a Mercurial File because in this challenge run, having access to True Strike is actually really, really useful. In fact, there's a lot of mechanics that are really only useful during this run, and I really look forward to putting up the first video for it, because so far, if these next couple of fights succeed, basically this this thing's actually viable. Long story short, if you're wondering why I mentioned it a while ago and it was really quiet, it's mostly because the run is functionally impossible unless a few thresholds are hit, and it's very close to hitting those at this point. So that video will be up when it's possible. Anyway, Anyway, though, so it turns out that as far as back attack goes, it actually does have a very specific niche. That if you are running those specific characters, a lot of them are going to have that benefit of being both melee and ranged units. So, for example, in the case of something like ninjas, their swords can be pretty darn threatening in the right circumstances, and their bows have every reason to use their debuffs. There's somebody that wants to be able to land those hits that potentially would need to boost both damage types at the same time. That's pretty obviously useful in and of itself. Having access to things like counter poison from your entire weapon list is absolutely tremendous. In the case of something like the Buccaneer, though, it's somebody that typically has far higher stats and such, and is running both pistol and sword, and potentially, using something like Evade to keep themselves safe. In the case of somebody like the Ranger, they're basically going all out for Dex, attempting to go assassinate somebody with basic attacks, because basic attacks are they got basic attacks and finishers. They don't really have many other modifiers to apply to there, while also, just like the Vartan, being somebody that typically runs around more than many other classes there. So again, they have that emphasis of being a potentially skirmisher build, going and boosting both melee and ranged at the same time, while also while also having the numbers to back up being just a regular physical attacker. Most other units get most of their super effective numbers from just going and using things like a finisher or whatnot. And in their particular case, sure, that's still useful, but having a skill that allows you to boost both accuracy types at the same time, I think that might be where its value was seen there. Because bear in mind, the only thing that actually changed from its PSP implementation here was the fact that it became free. So it was already fairly cheap before. And in fact, we actually see this in One Vision as well, where in One Vision's case, it was actually worked into trajectory, so that if anybody's running the trajectory skill, it effectively allows them to give themselves a kind of like focusing in accuracy boost, and it's really useful there. And in this particular case, it's definitely got its moments in challenge runs, I gotta say, where again, I was sitting here in the swamp and was just noticing, like, man, this is the first moment I've ever really, really wanted to have back attack, because I had just been playing some One Vision earlier, and yeah, I was like, yeah, you know what? I had like a pistol and knife Fusilier in that one, and I kept using back attack or using trajectory all the dang time, just to score some hits because he was having a hard time training up both skills, but like. In this particular case, like, yeah, if you're doing a challenge run and you're potentially running a kind of mixed damage situation, it can actually matter quite a bit. So, this isn't really going to be mind-blowing as far as a normal playthrough or whatever else, but it is a cool thing that it's one of the few things that can actually double stack accuracy. See, one of the other cool numbers to consider here is the fact that most other skills of their type have some kind of other guarantee to them. So, for example, something like a vigorous or whatever else will just go and boost those odds to 100%, right? So 100% towards melee. Or in the case of something like a dodge or let's say a full strike or something like that, that's 20% chunks in either direction. You stack them together, you have 40% dodge in every situation, right? So in this particular case, what we have is a skill that basically takes just a melee attack, ranged attack, and guarantees 55%. It is anomalously high for everything else. Right next to everything else, because even comparing with the guarantee, technically its numbers go up to 110% worth of value. Now, again, that's not exactly super useful in most situations playing normally, but as far as the kind of design through line here, as far as how they might potentially have been calculating this stuff, that finally tracks. See, that was the thing that was bugging me about this. That its overall value prospect, where it was, what it was doing, didn't really click with me until noticing this. Because somebody like, let's say, Vice or let's say, a Buccaneer or what have you, in their particular case, they've got the raw numbers to be able to do something like just picking up some cards, looking for an elemental advantage, and just taking advantage of that. And, let's say running forward, firing their bow one round, and then going for melee attack the next. That they have essentially, they have the means to go and make that a legitimate threat. While the generic version that gets it in the form of both the Archer and Ninja has other guarantees that they can potentially apply to this. So obviously the Archer already has guaranteed moves, but in their case it's like, well, they can use a dagger, they can use a bow, maybe somebody can make this work. In the case of the Ninja, they have access to it for presumably for their debuffs. The other thing on the Archer, though, is that it's also probably worth noting that as far as the AI is concerned, now I don't know how universal this is. This is just like briefly glossing over after realizing this. But I went through a few random fights throughout the game, and typically back attack seems to be located on the kind of surprise Archer unit. Now, what I mean by this is that there's usually an archer that has the opposite element to whatever the main element is. So, for example, in this particular case, they've got a lot of earth units here, so they would end up bringing along an ice archer to have this thing. Now, this is too early in the game for this guy to have this particular thing here, but it does seem to be like that guy is typically the one that has something like back attack on there. Additionally, it's usually located even once Eagle Eye is unlocked. Usually, it's available after it, implying that it's kind of serving the role as a secondary accuracy booster, as just kind of like we didn't want to give insanely nutty skills to the guy that's meant to just kind of counter you and clue you in that elemental counters are a thing. So this guy just boosts accuracy. He doesn't go for the guaranteed crits or anything like that. Now that might have just been a coincidence on the ones that I saw, but it does seem to be on a lot of them. Seemingly implying that they're mostly there as an ongoing tutorial, if I were to guess. But anyways, just a little bit of a thought there. But yeah, so that's kind of about that. So as far as back attack goes, that may not be very useful again in the day-to-day there, but as far as design is concerned, it really put a smile on my face to finally see what the skill might potentially be about. All right, anyway, so that's about that. Should probably get going then, maybe do something a bit more useful with my day. But that Union Level 0 run will be out at some point. I'm still working on that. Like I said, as soon as it gets to the first phase here, I can start going and posting this thing. Because basically it's going to go in 3 chunks. There's basically the beginning, like if this run can even get off the ground, then it's actually something that's going to be for phase 1. Phase 2 is basically the whole rest of the story mode, and then phase 4, I'm really curious to see if it's actually possible to beat the entire game like this, because I think it's all possible. But there's some questions. And for anyone curious why any of this would be relevant to a run like that, basically the no experience run originally, when we tried it the first time, was all about the recruits. And recruit in the hard mode of the mod was actually removed for everybody but the final Coda 4 trio. So, in this particular case, it's effectively a run that is operating entirely off of guaranteed moves and things things like that. So you'll notice we used a horn here to make it rain, to give us a bit of a dodge chance. Everyone's running one-handed weapons to give themselves a parry chance. We're running dodge on a lot of units to go and give us a chance to avoid attacks there. We're using 30% debuffs to go and get enemy units charmed against each other. Essentially, there's a huge emphasis on kind of playing the odds here first and foremost, and generally speaking, a total lack of skills in a lot of situations. So it's also to some degree serving as the no skills run, where literally only characters that have actually joined over the course of the story can even learn a skill whatsoever. And again, for anyone that doubted the power of Recruit, it was removed in the hard mode version of this mod because it was simply too overpowered to make the thing any challenge whatsoever by default. Anyways, so yeah, that's kind of where we're at with this one. So I just thought it was really cool. And yeah, I wish I had back attack on Canopus right now. Anyway, so yeah, that's about that. Actually, last little note here. At some point, due to wondering about the skill, I was considering doing a back attack only challenge, but in many ways, I feel like this is kind of serving the same role. Alright, anyways, that's about that. Y'all have yourselves a good one. Thank you for stopping by and listening to my completely pointless rant here. And, I hope it gives you some design appreciation on this whole thing as well. Alright, see y'all later.